Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Sunday reading Krishna book to Srila Prabhupada here in Sri Vrindavan Dham in his sacred room. And get your Krishna book and turn to chapter 42, the breaking of the bow in the sacrificial arena. And as always, before we begin, let us offer respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Nitya Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paskacha Deshatarane. And to each other, Vancha Kalpadrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, Srila Prabhupada, for your pleasure, Chapter 42, the breaking of the bow in the sacrificial arena. After leaving the florist's place, Krishna and Balaram saw a hunchback young woman carrying a dish of sandalwood pulp through the streets. Since Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure, he wanted to make all his companions joyous by cutting a joke with the hunchback woman. Krishna addressed her, "O tall young woman, who are you? Tell me, for whom are you carrying this sandalwood pulp in your hand? I think you should offer this sandalwood to me, and if you do so, I am sure you will be fortunate." Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he knew everything about the hunchback. By his inquiry, he indicated that there was no use in serving a demon. She would do better to serve Krishna and Balaram and get an immediate result of the service.
The woman replied to Krishna, "My dear Shyamasundara, dear beautiful dark boy, you may know that I am engaged as a maidservant of Kansa. I am supplying him pulp of sandalwood daily. The king is very much pleased with me for supplying this nice thing. But now I see that there is no one who can better be served by this pulp of sandalwood than you two brothers. Being captivated by the beautiful features of Krishna and Balarama, their talking, their smiling, their glancing, and their other activities, the hunchback woman began to smear all the pulp of sandalwood over their bodies with great satisfaction and devotion. The two transcendental brothers, Krishna and Balaram, were naturally beautiful and had beautiful complexions, and they were nicely dressed in colorful garments. The upper portion of their bodies were already very attractive, and when the hunchback woman smeared their bodies with sandalwood pulp, they looked even more beautiful. Krishna was very much pleased by this service, and he began to consider how to reward her. In other words, in order to draw the attention of the Lord, the Krishna conscious devotees has to serve him in great love and devotion. Krishna cannot be pleased by any other action than transcendental loving service unto him. Thinking like this, Lord Krishna praised the feet of the hunchback woman with his toes and, capturing her cheeks with his fingers, gave her a jerk in order to make her straight. At once, the hunchback woman became a beautiful straight girl with broad hips, thin waist, and very nice, well-shaped breast. Since Krishna was pleased with the service of the hunchback woman, and since she was touched by the Krishna's hands, she became the most beautiful girl among women. This incident shows that by serving Krishna, the devotee immediately becomes elevated to the most exalted position in all respects. Devotional service is so potent that anyone who takes to it becomes qualified with all godly qualities. Krishna was attracted to the hunchback woman not for her beauty but for her service. As soon as she rendered service, she immediately became the most beautiful woman. A Krishna conscious person does not have to be qualified or beautiful. After becoming Krishna conscious and rendering service unto Krishna, he becomes very much qualified and beautiful.
When the woman was turned by Krishna's favor into an absolutely beautiful young girl, she naturally felt very much obliged to Krishna, and she was also attracted by his beauty. Without hesitation, she caught rare parts of his cloth and began to pull it. She smiled furiously and admitted that she was agitated by the lusty desire. She forgot that she was on the street and before the elder brother of Krishna and his friends. She frankly proposed to Krishna, "My dear hero, I cannot leave you in this way. You must come to my place. I am already very much attracted to your beauty, so I must receive you well. And since you are the best among the males, you must also be very kind upon me." In the plain words, she proposed that Krishna come to her home and satisfy her lusty desire. Krishna, of course, felt a little bit embarrassed in front of his elder brother Balram, but he knew that the girl was simple and attractive. Therefore, he simply smiled at her words. Looking toward his coward boyfriends, he replied to the girl, "My dear beautiful girl, I am very much pleased by your invitation, and I must come to your home after finishing my other business here. Such a beautiful girl as you are the only means of solace for a person like us. You are away from home and not married. Certainly, a suitable girlfriend like you can give us refill from all kinds of mental agitation." Krishna satisfied the girl in this way with sweet words. Leaving her there, he proceeded down the street of the marketplace, where the citizens were prepared to receive him with various kinds of presentation, especially betel nuts, flowers, and sandalwood plums.
The mercantile men in the market worshipped Krishna and Balarama with great respect. When Krishna was passing through the street, all the women in the surrounding houses came to see him, and some of the younger ones almost fainted, being captivated by his beauty. Their hair and tight clothing loosened, and they forgot where they were standing. Krishna next inquired from the citizens as to the location of the place of the sacrifice. Kamsa had arranged for the sacrifice called Dhanur Yajna, and to designate this particular sacrifice, he had placed a big bow near the sacrificial altar. The bow was very big and wonderful and resembled a rainbow in the sky. Within the sacrificial arena, this bow was protected by many constables and watchmen engaged by King Kamsa. As Krishna and Balarama approached the bow, they were warned not to go nearer, but Krishna ignored this warning. He forcibly went up and immediately took up the big bow in his left hand. After stringing the bow in the presence of the crowd, he drew it and broke it at the middle into two parts, exactly as an elephant breaks sugarcane in the field. Everyone present appreciated Krishna's power. The sound of the bow cracking filled both sky and land and was heard by Kamsa. When Kamsa heard what had happened, he began to fear for his life. The caretakers of the bow, who were standing by watching, became very angry, and with their respective weapons in hand, they rushed toward Krishna, shouting, "Arrest him! Arrest him! Kill him! Kill him!" Krishna and Balarama were surrounded. When they understood the sinister motives of the gods, they became angry, and taking at the two pieces of the broken bow, they began to beat down all of Kamsa's caretakers. While this turmoil was going on, Kamsa sent a small group of troops to assist the caretakers, but Krishna and Balarama fought with them also and killed them.
After this, Krishna did not proceed further into the sacrificial arena, but went out the gate and proceeded towards their resting camp. Along the way, they visited various places in Mathura city with great delight. Seeing the activities and wonderful prowess of Krishna, all the citizens of Mathura began to consider the two brothers to be demigods who had come down to Mathura, and they all looked upon them with great astonishment. The two brothers strolled carefree in the street, not caring for the law and order of Kamsa. As sunset approached, Krishna, Balaram and their cowherd boyfriends went to the outskirts of the city, where all their carts were assembled. Thus Krishna and Balaram gave some preliminary hints of their arrival to Kamsa, and he could understand what severe type of danger was awaiting him the next day in the sacrificial arena. When Krishna and Balaram had been going from Vrindavan to Mathura, the inhabitants of Vrindavan had imagined the great fortune of the citizens of Mathura in being able to see the wonderful beauty of Krishna, who is worshipped by his pure devotees as well as the goddess of fortune. The fantasies of the residents of Vrindavan were now actually realized, for the citizens of Mathura became fully satisfied by seeing Krishna.
Krishna. When Krishna returned to his camp, he was taken care by servants who washed his lotus feet, gave him a nice seat, and offered him milk and palatable dishes. After taking supper and thinking of the next day's program, he very peacefully took rest. Thus he passed the night there. On the other side, when Kansa came to understand about the breaking of his wonderful bow and the killing of the caretaker and soldiers by Krishna, he could partially realize the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He could realize the eighth son of Devaki had appeared, and now his death was imminent. Thinking of his imminent death, he was restless and in the entire night. He began to have many inauspicious visions, and he could understand that Krishna and Balaram, who had approached the precinct of the city, were his messengers of death. Kansa saw various kinds of inauspicious signs while both awake and dreaming. When he looked in the mirror, he could not see his head. Although was actually present, he saw the luminaries in the sky in double. Although there was only one set factually, he began to see holes in the shadow, and he heard a high buzzing sound within his ears. All the trees before him appeared to be made of gold, and he could not see his own footprints in the dust or muddy clay. In dreams, he saw various kinds of ghosts being carried in a carriage drawn by donkeys. He also dreamed that someone gave him poison and he was drinking it. He dreamed also that he was going naked with the garland of flowers and was smearing oil all over his body. Thus, as Kansa saw various signs of death while both awake and sleeping, he could understand that death was certain, and thus, in great anxiety, he could not rest that night. Just after the night expired, he busily arranged for the wrestling match.
I'll do a...
It's okay.
The wrestling arena was nicely cleansed and decorated with flags, festoons, and flowers, and the match was announced by the beating of kettle drums. The platform appeared very beautiful due to streamers and flags. Different type of galleries were arranged for respectable persons, kings, brahmanas and kshatriyas. The various kings had reserved thrones and other had arranged seats also. Kamsa finally arrived, accompanied by various ministers and secretaries, and he sat on the raised platform, especially meant for him. Unfortunately, although he was sitting in the center of all his governing executive heads, his heart was palpitating in fear of death. Cruel death evidently does not care even for a person as powerful as Kamsa. When death comes, it does not care for anyone's exalted position.
When everything was complete, the wrestlers who were to exhibit their skills before the assembly walked into the arena. They were decorated with fine ornaments and dress. Some of the famous wrestlers were Chanura, Mustika, Shala, Kuta, and Toshala. Being enlivened by the musical concert, they passed through with great alacrity. All the respectable cowherd men who came from Vrindavan, headed by Nanda, were also welcomed by Kamsa. After presenting Kamsa with the milk products they had brought with them, the cowherd men also took their respective seats by the side of the king on a platform especially meant for them. Thus ends the Bhakti-Vedanta purport of the 42nd chapter of Krishna, the breaking of the bow in the sacrificial arena. Hari.
Chapter 43 The Killing of the Elephant Kuvalayapida. After taking their baths and finishing all other morning duties, Krishna and Balaram could hear the beating of the kettle drums in the wrestling arena. They immediately prepared themselves to proceed to the spot to see the fun. When Krishna and Balaram reached the gate of the wrestling arena, they saw a big elephant of the name Kuvalayapida being tended by a caretaker riding on his head. The caretaker was deliberately blocking the entrance by keeping the elephant in front of the gateway. Krishna could understand the purpose of the caretaker, and he prepared himself by tightening his clothes before combating the elephant. He addressed the caretaker in a very grave voice, as resounding as a cloud. You miscreant caretaker, give away and let me pass through the gate. If you block my way, I shall send you and your elephant to the house of death personified.
The caretaker, being thus insulted by Krishna, became very angry, and in order to challenge Krishna, as was previously planned, he provoked the elephant to attack. The elephant then moved before Krishna, like inevitable death. It rushed toward him and tried to catch him with its trunk. But Krishna very dexterously moved behind the elephant. Being able to see only to the end of its trunk, the elephant could not see Krishna, hiding behind its legs. But it tried to capture him with its trunk. Krishna again very quickly escaped capture, and he again ran behind the elephant and caught its tail. Holding the elephant by its tail, Krishna began to pull it, and with very great strength he dragged it for at least 25 yards, just as Garuda drags an insignificant snake. Krishna pulled the elephant from this side to that, from right to left, just as he used to pull a calf by its tail in his childhood. After this, Krishna went in front of the elephant and gave it a strong slap. He then slipped away from the elephant's view and ran to its back. Then, falling down on the ground, Krishna placed himself in front of the elephant's 2 legs and caused it to trip and fall. Krishna immediately got up, but the elephant, thinking that he was still lying down, tried to push an ivory tusk through the body of Krishna by forcibly stabbing it into the ground. Although the elephant was harassed and angry, the caretaker riding on its head tried to provoke it further. The elephant then rushed madly toward Krishna. As soon as it came within reach, Krishna caught hold of the trunk and pulled the elephant down. When the elephant and caretaker fell, Krishna jumped up on the elephant, broke off one of its tusks, and with it killed the elephant and the caretaker also. After killing the elephant, Krishna took the ivory tusk on his shoulder, decorated with drops of perspiration, and sprinkled with the blood of the elephant. He looked very beautiful. And thus he proceeded toward the wrestling arena. Lord Balaram thus took the other tusk of the elephant on his shoulder. Accompanied by the cowherd boyfriends, they entered the arena.
When Krishna entered the wrestling arena with Balaram and their friends, he appeared differently to different people, according to their different relationships or rasas with him. Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure and all kinds of rasas, both favorable and unfavorable. He appeared to the wrestlers exactly like a thunderbolt. To the people in general, he appeared as the most beautiful personality. To the females, he appeared to be the most attractive male, Cupid personified, and thus he increased their lust. The cowherd men who were present there looked upon Krishna as their own kinsman, coming from the same village of Vrindavan. The impious Kshatriya kings who were present saw him as the strongest ruler and their chastiser. To the parents of Krishna, Nanda and Yashoda, he appeared to be the most loving child. To Kamsa, the king of the Bodha dynasty, he appeared to be death personified. To the unintelligent, he appeared to be an incapable personality. To the yogis present, he appeared to be the supersoul. To the members of the Vrishni dynasty, he appeared to be the most celebrated descendant. Thus appreciated differently by different kinds of people present, Krishna entered the wrestling arena with Balaram and his cowherd boyfriends. Having heard that Krishna had already killed the elephant Kuvalyapita, Kamsa knew beyond doubt that Krishna was formidable. He thus became very much afraid of him. Krishna and Balaram had long arms. They were beautifully dressed, and they were attractive to all the people assembled there. They were dressed as if they were going to act on a dramatic stage, and they drew the attention of all people.
The citizen of Mathura city, who saw Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, became very much pleased and began to look on his face with insatiable glances, as if they were drinking the nectar of heaven. Seeing Krishna gave them so much pleasure that it appeared as if they were not only drinking the nectar of seeing his face, but were also smelling the aroma and licking up with their arms the taste of his body, and were embracing him and Balaram with their arms. They began to talk among themselves about the two transcendental brothers. For a long time they had heard of the beauty and activities of Krishna and Balaram, but now they were personally seeing them face to face. They thought that Krishna and Balaram were two plenary incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan who had appeared in Vrindavan.
The citizen of Vrindavan began to recite Krishna's pastime, his birth as the son of Vasudeva, his being taken in the care of Nanda Maharaj and his wife in Gokul, and all those events leading to his coming to Mathura to favor them. They spoke of the killing of the demon Putana as well as the killing of Dantavatra, who came as whirlwind. They also recalled the deliverance of the twin brothers from within the Ajamal Arjuna tree. The citizens of Mathura spoke among themselves. Sanchunda, Kesi, Danagusura, and many other demons were killed by Krishna and Balaram in Vrindavan. Krishna also saved all the coward men of the Vrindavan from devastating fire. He chastised the Kaliya snake in the water of Yamuna. He curbed the false pride of the heavenly king Indra. Krishna held up the great golden hill in one hand for 7 continuous days and saved all the people of Gokul from incessant rain, hurricanes, and hailstorm. They also began to remember other in living activities. The Dasmils of Vrindavan were so much pleased by seeing Krishna's beauty and participating in his activities that they forgot the troubles of the material exchange. By seeing Krishna and thinking of him, they forgot all sorts of friends. The Mathura citizen discussed the dynasty of Yadu, saying that because of Krishna's appearance in the dynasty of Yadu would remain the most celebrated family in the whole universe. The citizen of Mathura then began to talk about Balaram. They spoke of his very beautiful lotus petal eyes and they remarked of him. This boy was killed the Prabhalamba demon and many others also. While they were thus talking about the activities of Krishna and Balaram, they heard the vibration of different bands announcing the wrestling match.
The famous wrestler Chanura then began to talk with Krishna and Balarama. My dear Krishna and Balarama, he said, we have heard about your past activities. You are great heroes and therefore the king has called you. We have heard that your arms are very strong. The king and all the people present here decide to see a display of your wrestling abilities. A citizen should be obedient and please the mind of the ruling king. Acting in that way, the citizen attains all kinds of good fortune. One who does not care to act obediently is made unhappy because of the king's anger. You are cowherd boys, and we have heard that while tending your cows in the forest, you enjoy wrestling with each other. We wish, therefore, for you to join with us in wrestling so that all the people present here, including the king, will be pleased.
Krishna immediately understood the purpose of Chanura's statements and he prepared to wrestle with him. But according to the time and circumstances, he spoke as follows. You are a subject of the king of the Bhojas and you live in the jungle. We are also indirectly his subjects and we try to please him as far as possible. This offer of wrestling is a great favor of his. But the fact is that we are simply boys. We sometimes play in the forest of Vrindavan with our friends who are our own age. We think that to combat persons of equal age and strength is good for us, but to fight great wrestlers like you would not be good for the audience. It would contradict their religious principles. Krishna thus indicated that the celebrated strong wrestlers should not challenge Krishna and Balaram to fight.
In reply to this, Chanura said, "My dear Krishna, we can understand very well that you are neither a child nor a young man. You are transcendental to everyone, as is your big brother Balram. You have already killed the elephant Kuvalayapida, who was capable of fighting thousands of other elephants. You have killed him in a wonderful way. Because of your strength, it behooves you to compete with the strongest wrestlers amongst us. I, therefore, wish to wrestle with you, and your elder brother Balram will wrestle with Mustika." Thus ends the Bhakti-Vedanta purport of the 43rd chapter of Krishna, the killing of the elephant Kuvalayapida.
Hare Krishna. The killing of Kansa, chapter 14:4. After Kansa's wrestlers expressed their determination, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the killer of Madhu, confronted Chanura, and Lord Balram, the son of Rohini, confronted Mustika. Krishna and Chanura, and then Balram and Mustika locked themselves hand to hand, leg to leg, and each began to press against the other with a view to coming out victorious. They joined palm to palm, calf to calf, head to head, chest to chest, and began to strike each other. The fighting increased as they pushed each other from one place to another. One captured the other and threw him down on the ground, and another rushed from the back to the front of another and tried to overcome him with a hold. The fighting increased step by step. There was picking up, dragging, and pushing, and then the legs and hands were locked together. All the arts of wrestling were perfectly exhibited by the parties as each tried to his best to defeat his opponent.
But the audience in the wrestling arena was not very much satisfied because the combatants did not appear to be equally matched. They considered Krishna and Balram to be mere boys before Chanura and Mustika, who were the strongest wrestlers, as solid as stone. Being compassionate and favoring Krishna and Balram, the many ladies in the audience began to talk as follows. "My dear friends, there is injustice here." Another said, "Even in the front of the king, this wrestling is going on between incompatible sides." The ladies had lost their sense of enjoyment. They could not encourage the fighting between the strong and the weak. Mustika and Chanura are just like thunderbolts, as strong as great mountains, and Krishna and Balram are two delicate boys of very tender age. The principle of justice has already left the assembly. Persons who are aware of the civilized principles of justice will not remain to watch this unfair match. Those taking part in this wrestling match are not very much enlightened. Therefore, whether they speak or remain silent, they are being subject to the reactions of sinful activities.
But my dear friends, another lady in the assembly spoke out. Just look at the face of Krishna. There are drops of perspiration on his face from chasing his enemy, and his face appears like a lotus flower with drops of water. Another lady said, "Don't you see how the face of Lord Balram has turned especially beautiful? There is a reddish hue on his white face because he is engaged in a strenuous wrestling match with Mustika." Another lady in the assembly addressed her friend, "Dear friend, just imagine how fortunate is the land of Vrindavan, where the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself is present, always decorated with flower garlands and engaged in tending cows along with his brother Lord Balram. He is always accompanied by his cowherd boyfriends, and he plays his transcendental flute. The residents of Vrindavan are fortunate to be able to constantly see the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, which are worshipped by great demigods like Lord Shiva and by the goddesses of fortune. We cannot estimate how many pious activities were executed by the damsels of Vrajabhumi so that they were able to enjoy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by looking upon the unparalleled beauty of his transcendental body. The beauty of the Lord is beyond compare. No one is higher than or equal to him in beauty of complexion or bodily luster. Krishna and Balaram are the reservoir of all kinds of opulence, namely wealth, strength, beauty, fame, knowledge, and renunciation. The gopis are so fortunate that they can see and think of Krishna 24 hours a day, beginning from their milking the cows or husking the paddy or churning the butter in the morning, while engaged in cleaning their houses and washing their floors. They are always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna.
The gopis give a perfect example of how one can execute Krishna consciousness even while performing various types of material engagements. By constantly being absorbed in the thought of Krishna, one cannot be affected by the contamination of material activities. The gopis, therefore, are perfectly in trance, samadhi, the highest perfectional stage of mystic power. In the Bhagavad-Gita, it is confirmed that one who is constantly thinking of Krishna is a first-class yogi among all kinds of yogis. My dear friends, one lady told another, we must accept the activities of the gopis to be the highest form of piety. Otherwise, how could they have achieved the opportunity of seeing Krishna both morning and evening? In the morning, when he goes to the pasturing ground with his cows and cowherd boyfriends, and in the evening, when he returns with them, playing on his flute and smiling very brilliantly.
When Lord Krishna, the supersoul of every living being, understood that the ladies in the assembly were anxious for him, he decided not to continue wrestling, but to kill the wrestlers immediately. The parents of Krishna and Balaram, namely Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda, Vasudev, and Devaki, were also very anxious because they did not know the unlimited strength of their children. Lord Balaram was fighting with the wrestler Mushtika in the same way that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was fighting and wrestling with Chanura. Lord Krishna appeared to Chanura and he immediately struck him thrice with his fist. The great wrestler was jolted, to the astonishment of the audience. Chanura then took his last chance and attacked Krishna, just as one hawk swoops upon another. Folding his two hands, he began to strike the chest of Krishna. But Lord Krishna was not even slightly disturbed, any more than an elephant is when hit by a flower garland. Krishna quickly caught the two hands of Chanura and began to wheel him around. And simply by this centrifugal action, Chanura lost his life. Krishna then threw him to the ground. Chanura fell just like a flag of Indra, and all his nicely fashioned ornaments were scattered hither and thither.
Mushtika also struck Balaram, and Balaram returned the stroke with great force. Mushtika began to tremble and vomit blood. Distressed, he gave up his vital force and fell down just as a tree falls down in a hurricane. After the two wrestlers were killed, a wrestler named Kuta came forward. Lord Balaram immediately caught him in his left hand and killed him nonchalantly. A wrestler of the name Shala came forward, and Krishna immediately cracked his head with a kick. A wrestler named Toshala came forward and was killed in the same way. Thus all the great wrestlers were killed by Krishna and Balaram, and the remaining wrestlers fled from the assembly out of fear for their lives. All the cowherd boyfriends of Krishna and Balaram approached them and congratulated them with great pleasure. While trumpets resounded and drums were beaten, the leg bells on the feet of Krishna and Balaram tinkled.
All the people gathered there began to clap in great ecstasy, and no one could estimate the bounds of their pleasure. The Brahmanas present began to praise Krishna and Balaram ecstatically. Only Kansa was morose. He neither clapped nor offered benediction to Krishna. Kansa resented that the trumpets and the drums should be played for Krishna's victory, and he was very sorry that the wrestlers had been killed and had fled the assembly. He therefore immediately ordered the band to stop playing and addressed his men as follows. I order that these two sons of Vasudeva be immediately driven out of Mathura. The coward boys who have come with them should be plundered and all their riches taken away. Nanda Maharaj should immediately be arrested and killed for his cunning behavior, and that rascal Vasudeva should also be killed without delay. Also my father Ugrasena, who has always supported my enemies against my will, should be killed.
When Kamsa spoke in this way, Lord Krishna became very angry with him, and within a second he jumped onto the high dais of King Kamsa. Kamsa was prepared for Krishna's attack, for he knew from the beginning that Krishna was to be the supreme cause of his death. Kamsa immediately unsealed his sword and prepared to answer the challenge of Krishna with sword and shield. As Kamsa wheeled his sword up and down, Hitler and Titler, Lord Krishna, the supreme powerful Lord, caught hold of him with great force. The supreme personality of Godhead, who is the shelter of the complete creation, and from whose lotus navel the whole creation is manifested, immediately knocked crown from the head of Kamsa and grabbed his long hair in his hand. He then dragged Kamsa from his seat to the wrestling dais and threw him down. Then Krishna at once set his chest and began to strike him over and over again. Simply from the stroke of Krishna's fists, Kamsa lost his vital force.
To assure his parents that Kamsa was dead, Lord Krishna dragged him just as a lion drags an elephant after killing it. When people saw this, there was a great roaring sound from all sides as some spectators expressed their jubilation and others cried in lamentation. From the day Kamsa had heard he would be killed by the eighth son of Devaki, he was always thinking of Krishna with his wheel in hand. And because he was very much afraid of his death, he was thinking of Krishna in that form 24 hours a day without stopping, even while eating, while walking, and while breathing. And naturally, he got the blessing of liberation. In the Bhagavad-Gita, it is stated, Sada Tat Bhava Bhavida. A person gets his next life according to the thoughts in which he is always absorbed. Kamsa was thinking of Krishna with his wheel, which means Narayana, who holds a wheel, conch shell, lotus flower, and club.
According to the opinion of authorities, Kamsa attained Sarupya Mukti after death. That is to say, he attained the same form as Narayan, Vishnu. On the Vaikuntha planets, all the inhabitants have the same bodily features as Narayan. After his death, Kamsa attained liberation and was promoted to Vaikuntha Loka. From this instance, we can understand that even a person who thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as an enemy gets liberation or a place in the Vaikuntha planet. So what to speak of the pure devotees who are always absorbed in favorable thoughts of Krishna? Even an enemy killed by Krishna gets liberation and is placed in the impersonal Brahmayoti. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is all good, anyone thinking of him, either as an enemy or as a friend, gets liberation. But the liberation of the devotee and the liberation of the enemy are not the same. The enemy generally gets the liberation of Sayuja, and sometimes he gets Sarupya liberation.
Kamsa had 8 brothers, headed by Kanka, all of them younger than he. And when they learned that their elder brother had been killed, they combined together and rushed toward Krishna in great anger to kill him. Kamsa and his brothers were all Krishna's maternal uncles, brothers of Krishna's mother Devaki. When Krishna killed Kamsa, he killed his maternal uncle, which is against the regulations of Vedic injunctions. Although Krishna is independent of all Vedic injunctions, he violates the Vedic injunctions only in inevitable cases. Kamsa could not be killed by anyone but Krishna. Therefore, Krishna was obliged to kill him. But as far as Kamsa's 8 brothers were concerned, Balarama took charge of killing them. Balarama's mother, Rohini, although the wife of Vasudeva, was not the sister of Kamsa. Therefore, Balarama took charge of killing all of Kamsa's 8 brothers. He immediately took up an available weapon, most probably the elephant's tusk, which he carried, and killed the 8 brothers, one after another, just as a lion kills a flock of deer. Krishna and Balarama thus verify the statement that the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears in order to give protection to the pious and to kill the impious demons, who are always enemies of the demigods.
The demigods from the higher planetary system showered flowers, congratulating Krishna and Balram. Among demigods were powerful personalities like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, and all joined together in showing their jubilation over Kansa's death. There were beating of drums and showering of flowers from the heavenly planets, and the wives of the demigods danced in ecstasy.
The wives of Kansa and 8 brothers were aggrieved at the sudden death of their husbands, and all of them struck foreheads and shed torrents of tears, crying loudly and embracing the bodies of their husbands, which lay on the wrestling dais. The wives of Kansa and his brothers lamented, addressing the dead bodies, "Our dear husbands, you are so kind and are the protectors of our dependents. Now, after your death, we are also dead. Along your homes and children, we no longer took auspicious. On account of your death, the auspicious functions of take place, such as sacrifice of the bow, have all been spoiled. Our dear husbands, you treated persons ill who were faultless, and as a result, you have been killed. This is inevitable because a person who torments an innocent person must be punished by the laws of nature. We know that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the Supreme Master and Supreme Enjoyer of everything. Therefore, one who neglects his authority can never be happy. Ultimately, he meets death.
Since Krishna was kind and affectionate to his aunts, he solaced them as far as possible. The ritualistic ceremonies performed after death were then conducted under the personal supervision of Krishna. Because he happened to be the nephew of all the dead princes, after finishing this business, Krishna and Balaram immediately released their father and mother, Vasudeva and Devaki, who had been imprisoned by Kamsa. Krishna and Balaram fell at their parents' feet and offered them prayers. Vasudeva and Devaki had suffered so much trouble from Kamsa because Krishna was their son. Devaki and Vasudeva were fully conscious of Krishna's exalted position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, although Krishna touched their feet and offered them obeisances and prayers, they did not embrace him, but simply stood up to hear the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Krishna was born as their son, Vasudeva and Devaki were always conscious of his position. Thus ends the Bhakti-Vedanta purport of 44th chapter of Krishna, the killing of Krishna Balaram ki. Shall we continue?
Chapter 45. Krishna recovers the son of his teacher. When Lord Krishna saw Vasudeva and Devaki standing in a reverential attitude, he immediately expanded his influence of Yogamaya so that they could treat him and Balaram as children. As in the material world, the relationship existing between father and mother and children can be established amongst different living entities by the influence of the illusory energy. So, by the influence of Yogamaya, the devotee can establish a relationship in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead is his child. After creating this situation by his Yogamaya, Krishna, appearing with his elder brother Balaram as the most illustrious son in the dynasty of Satvatas, very submissively and respectfully addressed Vasudeva and Devaki. My dear father and mother, although you have always been anxious for our protection of our lives, you could not enjoy the pleasure of having us as your babies. As your growing boys and as your adolescent youths, Krishna indirectly praised the fatherhood of Nanda Maharaj and motherhood of Yashoda as most glorious because although he and Balaram were not their born sons, Nanda and Yashoda actually enjoyed the childhood pastimes. By nature's own arrangement, the childhood of the embodied living being is enjoyed by his parents. Even in the animal kingdom, parents are found to be affectionate to their cubs. Being captivated by the activities of their offspring, they take much care for their well-being. As for Vasudeva and Devaki, they were always anxious for the protection of their sons, Krishna and Balaram. That is why Krishna, after his appearance, was immediately transferred to another's house. Balaram was also transferred from Devaki's womb to Rohini's womb.
Vasudeva and Devaki were full of anxieties for Krishna's and Balaram's protection, but they could not enjoy their childhood pastimes. Krishna said, "Unfortunately, being ordered by our fate, we could not be raised by our own parents to enjoy childhood pleasures at home. My dear father and mother, a man cannot repay his debt to his parents, from whom he gets this body, which can bestow upon him all the benefits of material existence. According to the Vedic injunctions, this human form of life enables one to perform all kinds of religious activities, fulfill all kinds of desires, and acquire all kinds of wealth. And only in this human form is there every possibility that one can get liberation from material existence. This body is produced by the combined efforts of the father and mother. Every human being should be obliged to his parents and understand that he cannot repay his debt to them. If after growing up a son does not try to satisfy his parents by his actions or by an endowment of riches, he is surely punished after death by the superintendent of death and made to eat his own flesh. If a person is able to care for or give protection to old parents, a chaste wife, children, the spiritual master, brahmanas, and other dependents, but does not do so, he is considered already dead, although he is supposedly breathing. My dear father and mother, you have always been anxious for our protection, but unfortunately we could not render any service to you. Until now, we have simply wasted our time due to reasons beyond our control. We could not serve you. Mother and father, please excuse us for our sinfulness.
When the Supreme Personality of Godhead was speaking as an innocent boy in very sweet words, Vasudeva and Devaki became captivated by parental affection and embraced him with great pleasure. They were amazed and could not speak or answer the words of Krishna, but simply embraced him and Balaram in great affection and remained silent, shedding incessant tears. Thus, having consoled his father and mother, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing as the beloved son of Devaki, approached his grandfather Ugrasena and announced that Ugrasena would now be the king of the Yadu kingdom. Kamsa had been forcibly ruling the kingdom of Yadu in spite of the presence of his father whom he had arrested. But after the death of Kamsa, his father was released and announced to be the monarch of the Yadu kingdom. It appears that in those days, in the western part of India, there were many small kingdoms ruled by the Yadu dynasty, Andaka dynasty, Vrishni dynasty, and Bhoja dynasty. Maharaj Ugrasena belonged to the Bhoja dynasty. Therefore, Krishna indirectly declared that the king of the Bhoja dynasty would be the emperor of the other small kingdoms. Krishna willingly asked Maharaj Ugrasena to rule over himself and Balaram because they were his subjects. The word praja is used both for progeny and for citizens. So Krishna belonged to the praja, both as a grandson of Maharaj Ugrasena's and as a member of the Yadu dynasty. Thus he voluntarily accepted the rule of Maharaj Ugrasena. He informed Ugrasena, being cursed by Yayati, the kings of the Yadu dynasty may not occupy the throne. It will be our pleasure to act as your servants. My full cooperation with you will make your position more exalted and secure, so that the kings of other dynasties will not hesitate to pay their respective revenues. Protected by me, you will be honored even by the demigods from the heavenly planets. My dear grandfather, out of fear of my late uncle Kamsa, all the kings belonging to the Yadu, Vrishni, Andaka, Madhu, Dashara, and Kukura dynasties were very anxious and disturbed. Now you can pacify them all and give them assurance of security. The whole kingdom will be peaceful.
All the kings in the neighboring area had left their homes in fear of Kamsa and were living in distant parts of the country. Now, after the death of Kamsa and the reinstallment of Ugrasena as king, the neighboring kings were given all kinds of presentations and comforts. Then they returned to their respective homes. After this nice political arrangement, the citizens of Mathura were pleased to live in Mathura, being protected by the strong arms of Krishna and Balaram. On account of good government in the presence of Krishna and Balaram, the inhabitants of Mathura felt complete satisfaction in the fulfillment of all their material desires and necessities. And because they saw Krishna and Balaram daily, face to face, they soon forgot all material miseries completely. As soon as they saw Krishna and Balaram coming out on the street, very nicely dressed and smiling, and looking at the citizens with grace, the citizens were immediately filled with loving ecstasies simply by seeing the personal presence of Mukunda. The name Mukunda refers to one who can award liberation and transcendental bliss. Krishna's presence acted as such a vitalizing tonic that not only the younger generation but even the old men of Mathura became fully invigorated with youthful energy and strength by regularly seeing him.
Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda were also living in Mathura because Krishna and Balarama were there. But after some time, they wanted to go back to Vrindavan. Krishna and Balaram went before Nanda and Yashoda and very affectionately embraced them. And then the two lords spoke as follows: Dear father and mother, although we were born of Vasudeva and Devaki, you have been our real father and mother, because from our very birth and childhood you raised us with great affection and love. Your affectionate love for us was more than anyone can offer one's own children. You are actually our father and mother, because you raised us as your own children when we were just like orphans. For certain reasons, we were rejected by our father and mother, and you protected us. Dear father and mother, we know that you will feel separation upon returning to Vrindavan and leaving us here. But please rest assured that we shall come back to Vrindavan just after giving some satisfaction to our real father and mother, Vasudeva and Devaki, and our grandfather and other family members. Krishna and Balaram thus satisfied Nanda and Yashoda by sweet words and by presentation of various kinds of clothing, ornaments, and copper utensils. They satisfied them along with their friends and neighbors who had come with them from Vrindavan to Mathura as fully as possible. On account of excessive parental affection for Balaram and Krishna, Nanda Maharaj felt tears in his eyes, and he embraced them and started with the cowherd men for Vrindavan.
After this, Vasudeva had his son initiated by the secret thread as the token of the second birth, which is essential for the higher caste of the human society. Vasudeva called for his family priest and learned brahmanas, and the secret thread ceremony of Krishna and Balaram was duly performed. During this ceremony, Vasudeva gave various ornaments in charity to the brahmanas and endowed them with the cows decorated with silken cloth and golden ornaments. Then Vasudeva remembered the cows he had wanted to give in charity to the Brahmana after the birth of Krishna and Balaram. After being imprisoned by Kamsa at that time, Vasudeva had been able to do so only within his mind, for Kamsa had stolen all his cows. With the death of Kamsa, his cows were released, and now Vasudeva gave the actual cows to the Brahmanas. Then Balaram and Krishna were duly initiated with the secret thread ceremony, and they repeated the chanting of the Gayatri mantra.
We're at the end. Pass it on, because we're just at the end, so everyone can get a chance.
The Gayatri Mantra is offered to disciples after the sacred thread ceremony, and Balarama and Krishna properly discharge the duties of chanting this mantra. Anyone who executes the chanting of this mantra has to abide by certain principles and vows. Although Balarama and Krishna are transcendental personalities, they strictly followed the regulative principles. They were initiated by their family priest Gargacharya, usually known as Gargamuni, the Acharya of the Yadu dynasty. According to Vedic culture, every respective family has an Acharya or spiritual master, one who is not considered a perfectly cultured man without being initiated and trained by an Acharya. It is said, therefore, that one who has approached an Acharya is actually in perfect knowledge. Lord Krishna and Balarama are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all education and knowledge. There was no need for them to accept a spiritual master or Acharya. Yet, for the instruction of ordinary men, they also accepted a spiritual master for advancement in spiritual knowledge.
It is customary, after being initiated in the Gayatri mantra, for one to live away from home for some time under the care of the Acharya to be trained in spiritual life. During this period, one has to work under the spiritual master as an ordinary menial servant. There are many rules and regulations for a brahmachari living under the care of an Acharya, and Krishna and Balaram strictly followed those regulative principles while living under the instruction of their spiritual master, Sandapani Muni, who was a resident of Avantipur in the northern Indian district of Ujjain. According to scriptural injunctions, the spiritual master should be respected and regarded on an equal level with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna and Balaram exactly followed these principles with great devotion and underwent the regulations of brahmacharya.
Thus, they satisfied their spiritual master, who instructed them in Vedic knowledge. Being very satisfied, Sandipani Muni instructed them in all the intricacies of Vedic wisdom and in supplementary literature, such as the Upanishads. Because Krishna and Balarama happened to be Kshatriyas, they were specifically trained in military science, politics, and ethics. Politics includes such departments of knowledge as how to make peace, how to fight, how to pacify, and how to divide and rule, and how to give shelter. All these items were fully explained and instructed to Krishna and Balarama.
The ocean is the source of water in a river. The cloud is created by the evaporation of ocean water, and the same water is distributed as rain all over the surface of the earth and then returns to the ocean in rivers. So Krishna and Balaram, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are the source of all knowledge, but because they were playing like ordinary human boys, they set the example so that everyone would receive knowledge from the right source. Thus, they agreed to take knowledge from a spiritual master.
After hearing only once from their teacher, Krishna and Balram learnt all the arts and science. In 64 days and 64 nights, they learned all the necessary arts and sciences required in human society. During the daytime, they took lesson on a subject from the teacher, and by nightfall, they were expert in the department of knowledge. Wow, so quick.
First of all, they learned how to sing, how to compose songs, and how to recognize the different tunes. They learned the favorable and unfavorable accents and meters, how to sing different kinds of rhythms and melodies, and how to follow them by beating different kinds of drums. They learned how to dance to the rhythm of the melody of different songs. They learned how to write dramas, and they learned the various types of painting from simple village art up to the highest perfectional stage. They also learned how to paint tilak on the face by making different kind of dots on the forehead and cheeks. Then they learned the art of making paintings on the floor with a liquid paste of rice and flour. Such paintings are very popular at auspicious ceremonies performed at household affairs or in the temple. They learn how to make resting place with flowers and how to decorate clothing and limbs with colorful paintings. They also learn how to set valuable jewels in ornaments. They learn the art of ringing water pots.
Water pots are filled with water to a certain measurement so that as one beats on the pots, different tones are produced, and when the pots are beaten together, they produce a melodious sound. They also learn how to splash water in the rivers or lakes while taking a bath among friends. They learned how to decorate with flowers. This art of decorating can still be seen in various temples of Vrindavan during the summer season. It is called Fulla Badi. The dais, the throne, the walls, and the ceiling are all fully decorated, and a small aromatic fountain of flowers is fixed in the center. Because of these floral decorations, the people, fatigued from the heat of the summer, become refreshed.
Okay. You read just a little bit. So that concludes our Sunday Krishna book reading to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, thank you for letting us all come to read to you from your wonderful Krishna book. And as always, let us offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Namo Vishnuvidaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paskaja Deshatarane. And to each other, Vanchakalpadurvyas Cha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Krishna Book. Jai Srila Prabhupada. So